You only need these 3 run key sessions to be a faster runner as a triathlete. Listen up. I hope you learned something. Let's face it, we don't have the same amount of time that professional athletes have, which run about 6 times a week. Over my years of coaching, almost 20 years now, we realized that amateurs, age groupers, they're juggling life. They're pretty driven people, type A personalities, a lot of them, so they will push the boundaries. They're juggling the work, normally a family, and trying to have some sort of social life. So we need big bang for buck sessions. Now, if you speak to a whole host of different physiologists and coaches, you might get variations of this. I've tried to simplify it to give you some really good, precise sessions that you can do most of the year round, how to break them up, when to do them and why, not just do these sessions 6 by 3 minutes that make you fast. Just to understand a little bit of the physiology. Often just increasing your weekly mileage just leads to injury. Majority of athletes now moving into the older categories, 40 plus, 50 plus, even 60 plus. You can still train like this. You just need to be relative with the recovery. Okay, so I'll touch on those points. You can't go all 3 runs hard or all 3 runs easy. You'll just plateau, and certainly if you try to do all 3 runs hard, we know how that ends. Okay, it's not a lot of volume, but you can play around with the length and duration based on where you've started and potentially the race distance if it's 70.3 or a full Ironman. But also we want to work on your strength and efficiency, because the last 2 are going to be crucial for your development and are going to make you run a faster marathon or half marathon off the bike. So please listen up. I hope you'll enjoy this one. So let's dive straight in because you're itching to go. Okay. First one. Yes, you've heard me say it before. I'm going to give it a little bit more detail. Hill reps. Okay. Hill reps. Speed work in disguise. Most running coaches use hill reps. It's your bread and butter for speed and strength and economy. So running fast is all about economy, the least amount of energy for a given pace. Now you can do these all year round. Great, okay. However, I'm going to give you 3 sessions under each heading. So there's 9 sessions in total. Okay. All right, so 8 to 10 30-second fast efforts. At the end of your traditional long run. Okay, so you might say, oh, those aren't really hill reps. You're absolutely right. We're working on a few things like run economy, and we are also building some really good strength, but really low cost, because we've done potentially a 60 to 75 minute long run. If you're a half Ironman athlete, I'd only make around 8 efforts. If you're moving towards marathon, 10, maybe 12 efforts at the end of a fairly decent zone 2 endurance run. You're going to stimulate, you're going to put the correct fibers, you're going to really fire up the posterior chain, and you're going to really push the body into improving its economy. Okay, so you can do those all year round to maintain some level of stimulus. You might only do 5 or 6 efforts around that. All right, now for a little bit of a faster, for a little bit of more strength development to carry over to Olympic distance half Ironman, something like I like to prescribe moderate to hard. So I've got an RPE effort here, okay, of 8 out of 10. Because it's quite difficult to give you exact speed because it's gradient related. Now you're going to have a jog recovery, so however long it takes to jog back down, that's your recovery process, but not longer than sort of 2 minutes ideally. If it takes you 90 to get up, you don't want to spend 3 minutes coming down. The last one, more of a strength endurance, so longer reps, 2 to 3 minutes if you can manage. Jog recovery down, doesn't have to be super strict, but if you're doing it outside, you would naturally just turn around at the top and jog down. Starting at 5 reps, so you've got about 10 to 15 minutes of work. Great in the off season to really build tissue resilience, build back your fitness. But I think the key here is to keep your heart rate under the threshold, guys. and that is your top of your zone 4 heart rate if your zones are correctly done. We want to keep the session aerobic, but the speed is low because you're going up again a gradient that you can manage for that length of duration. For the repetition, 5 to 7% would be good, but you're not going super hard. You're working on strong core, swinging the arms, pushing through your forefoot to really extend through the back leg so your hip moves. So you need a good flexibility session to open up your hips at the start of that. A really good warm-up with maybe some small, short strides to get the body a little bit prepped, and then build into that session. Don't go all out in the first rep. So there you have 3 sessions within the first subject, heel reps. I think every runner and every coach would always include heel repetitions. It's just your bread and butter, real high bang for your buck. And I think just write those down. There's something for everyone in there, and most of that you can do all year round, as you can agree. Depending if you're training for a marathon, you might extend those to 5-minute climbs or 1 kilometer reps. If you're doing 70.3, I'd keep it slightly shorter, and Olympic distance around here, because you want some good spring in the step and you want strength. Running off the bike in a triathlon is all about strength. Okay, you do need an element of speed. Generally speaking, when we try and do a lot of speed work, you can pick up injuries really quickly. Okay, next one. The second area that I wanted to touch on, type of session, might be called tempo for some people, but tempo I generally split into 2. Sub-threshold, so just below your threshold critical pace. So this is pace related. Can also bring heart rate in. So we try work around 90% of your threshold. Okay. Best way to try work out your threshold, if you haven't done that before, is probably do a 20-minute or a 5K run and take off about plus or minus, it's quite individual, plus or minus 5% of that to get your threshold paced. Or if you have some recent 10-kilometer times and heart rate, that's pretty good to go. So there's all variations of this. If you first starting, I would probably just try work on 2 by 10-minute blocks with 2 to 3 minute recovery. So now this can be done ideally on a flat to give you an exact pace. But if you live in a hilly terrain, the pace will vary a little bit based on the undulations. It's quite a tough session because you're working at or around your threshold for 10 minutes of duration. Now this carries over to 5 kilometers and 10 kilometers specifically really well. Develops that upper end of your aerobic lactate tolerance really. Okay, so the reason why I said 2, it's a starting point for most runners, can manage probably 1 to 2 of those. So that's the first type of session. The second one is slightly longer duration. Let me just check. Yeah, so it's an 8 to 12 minute. Okay, so a little bit of a variation depending on your progression. And I would probably do this in season, where this is quite good to keep a little bit of maintenance, 2, maybe 3 reps. So this, moving on to 3 repetitions, moving over the 30-minute mark of work. So if you did 3 by 12, that of course is about 36 minutes. So if you're working around the magic 32 minutes of work, you're pretty good, whether it's 4 by 8, 8 by 4 minutes in physiological terms. Of course, the longer the duration of the effort, the harder it is to sustain. And what you want to try do is keep that heart rate regulated. So if you are going, again, you want to try keep it below threshold heart rate. Now, that's quite hard. If you're going into VO2, so above threshold, the pace is too fast, or these durations need to drop and you're not fit enough. So you need to do a little bit more zone 2 work to be able to handle the load. The final one, now this is for probably marathon sessions, so Ironman athletes. 15-minute duration at sub-threshold's pretty hard with a 5-minute break. That can be relaxed a little bit as well. If you can manage a third one, you've done 45 minutes of work. That's really hard. So that's probably about 12 kilometers of work. And that I would only do in your build to a marathon or a 70.3. This, remember I said the first one can be done in your off season as maintenance. This is if you're trying to push on your 10K half marathon pace. You want to be working around that 30 plus minutes of work. That I would only do in your build to a marathon or a 70.3. This, remember I said the first one can be done in your off season as maintenance. This is if you're trying to push on your 10K half marathon pace. You want to be working around that 30 plus minutes of work. For the more experienced runners that have a good base of fitness, a few years of running, because most people set out to try to do that first 15 minutes, their heart rate will go over threshold and they're actually not getting the adaptations. Because what we want to try to do is work just below your threshold to try to stimulate it. It turns it into a completely different session if you're running too quick, and it increases the chance of injury. It's degrading. The physiology around it is too stressful, which goes back to when we build the marathon plan or the training plan or the Ironman plan. You can see on some other videos, we wouldn't do more than 2 hard workouts in a week, and this is classed as an intense workout. So, right, hopefully that lines up quite nicely with your thought process. Third one, ready to go in a second. The third one, the final session, which you will get a lot out of. Now it's quite specific to triathlon. We call it a negative split. Negative split run or a progressive. You've probably seen this. Now these are really good for a number of reasons. We should be running with the mindset of negative split, certainly in run races. But it builds in a bit of an insurance policy, something I learned from a coach 2009. If you start off slower, like zone 2, I'll work through it, zone 3, zone 4, you might have done 40 minutes before you're actually running very hard. So your body's really warmed up, primed. The chances are you're going to run a little bit slower than that fresh pace of 3:30 per kilometer, for example. So it builds in a nice injury prevention progressive. Okay, so these can be done off the bike. So this is obviously very specific for tri, and it's in season. Okay. Something I give my guys most of the year round, depending on what they're training for. I might only just do a fresh run, for example, 15 minutes in total of progressive, more detail to come. But that's all year round. But a standalone long session can be anything between 45 and 75 minutes. Okay, really, really good bread and butter running. So you've got your heel strength work, you've got your sub threshold, and you've got your negative split progressive, which you can pad out, shorten, or lengthen. Okay, so you might only want to go 20 to 30 minutes brick. So brick, remember, is off the bike. And you would probably start in zone 2, move to zone 3, and finish in zone 4. So that's what we would probably call threshold at zone 4. And you might break that up as 10, 5, 5 to start with. That's really quite challenging. Or this is in minutes. Okay, so it's continuous and you change the gears. Okay, you might go, if it's off the bike, for example, you wouldn't want to spend too long there. Off the bike, you might go 5, zone 2, 10 minutes, zone 3, 10 minutes, zone 4. Okay, so there's 25 minutes of work, but really pretty tough. Okay, the second version is just a 10K progressive. Okay, so this might be just based on terrain. You'd build in, you warm up for, roughly 2 kilometers, 10 minutes, 12 minutes for most people, and then use the undulations to basically just push the effort up and keep progressing for 10Ks. So it's a really simple bread and butter session. I know the Brownlees do a lot of that on the canal down in Leeds in the UK, where they just start steady and they ramp it up to race pace. And they'll do a lot of that in the off season just to keep some stimulus to not get stale and slow, but it's not like doing 10 by 1Ks at race pace. For an Ironman big session, those of you watching this, you can do this as well as a 70.3 athlete. You just shorten it. So you would do 8 kilometers brick, and you would go zone 3 to threshold to VO2. Okay, so really hard. So it would probably be 3Ks at threshold and 3Ks if you can manage at VO2, which is very difficult. You could slice that up obviously to 4, 2, and then a cool down. Okay, so big session off the bike, 8Ks, and then for 70.3, I would probably just do that as 1 to 1 kilometer, something like that. So it's more like a 4K with a warm up, with a cool down of 3 or 4Ks, because you don't need to do too much volume there. There you have it, 3 key, quite detailed sessions, specific physiological sessions, adaptations. If you found this pretty valuable, don't forget to subscribe and you won't miss out on new videos every Tuesday and Friday. If you need more personalized guidance and your best shot to qualify for Kona, hit in the first link in the description. And thanks for watching. See you at the next video.